Luis, Xerxes is back in the Legend of Vox Machina. It was such a great appearance. I was so hyped when I saw it. What was your first thoughts when like Travis kind of texted you and was kind of like seeing if that was something you were going to be open to?
Well, I mean, that's interesting because I at first Travis was texting me with just some questions, kind of feeling out, wanting to dig a little bit more deeply into Zerxus and what kind of runs him. And I also think that there are some questions about what his state of mind might be in present day Exandria. So, of course, a part of me was like, "What's this about?" And then shortly after that he told me that it looks like there's an opportunity to fold Zerxus into the animated series. And I was at the grocery store, I think, when that exchange happened. And I just remember stopping and being like, wait, what? Hell yeah. So it was just really exciting. And also, another part of the excitement is kind of wondering, okay, well, what does that mean? And how does he fit in? And what does that mean for where the kind of person that he is now? So it just got like my mind just started kind of going rapid fire with wondering about this person that I felt like I knew so well, but
Yeah,
now wondering, well, where is he now? And that was pretty cool. So it was at Ralph's.
I love it. And then, so Travis was like a big part of this episode because he wrote the episode. Were you involved in kind of figuring out where Xerxes was and all those aspects, or was it through kind of the text questions that was figured out, or did you come in later to help work with him on that as well?
No, I gave just a little bit of feedback about him and those text messages and phone calls, and the rest of it was all Travis. And I keep thinking about how awesome it is to see someone else capture the character you created with
Yeah.
so many layers and so much happening. So it was a real treat to be able to see how he took that and had his own understanding of the character and how the character fits in the Vox Machina world. And to see that so much of the heart was absolutely like the heart was there.
Yeah.
It was cool. Nice job, Travis. I appreciate you.
Did that evolution kind of fit with where you thought Xerxes was going to be? And how did it feel to have another voice kind of come in and help bring a new growth to this character that has really been yours?
That is something I actually thought a lot about. I have already, before even this was on the table, I couldn't help myself but wonder what Xerxes's fate could have been. So I think I had already primed myself to imagine a lot of different possible realities for his trajectory. And this this really version of this already existed in my mind in one of those avenues. And yeah, I mean, it's heartbreaking because there's so many parallel roads, and
Yeah.
some of them has him going down so many different paths that are less heartbreaking. But this was absolutely one of them. And to the other part of what you were talking about, creating like this is a really interesting thing because it is such a collaboration. And I know that I created Xerxes, his backstory, his key relationships, but the second I presented them to Brennan, and the second that started to get woven into the story of the Ring of Brass in the Calamity miniseries, pieces of him became so influenced by other people's contributions. Brennan's contributions, the way Brennan played Evandrin and Elias, the key NPCs for Xerxes. And I keep going back to a specific encounter in Calamity between myself and Lou's Nidus, that I feel like altered Xerxes's trajectory. Like their fingerprints are all over him already from the evolution of the Calamity campaign. That you know, it doesn't feel like I'm a stranger to that part of the collaboration, to then see how he's interpreted through Travis's writing. It's just another layer and another creative's fingerprints that are on this character. And it's actually really cool. It's very cool to see. It's kind of like how I imagine a writer handing what they've written, the script that they've written, to an actor and seeing how the actor then interprets it and lives it. It's sort of this reverse engineered. Like, I created the character, and then in this particular trajectory, that character was handed to Travis, who then wrote this his existence in Vox Machina, and then that gets handed back to me to interpret again. It's really weird and really awesome.
I love it. And then can you talk to me about your approach to this character as a voice actor? Because I felt like your voice was a little bit lower than we had it in the campaign.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it was encountering how Travis wrote him
Yeah.
and noticing the changes that have happened, and then me being able to understand this is the this is a particular evolution of his point of view. And with that comes the possibility of changes in cadence, changes in pattern, and how the person is different. They've had 1,000 years to change. And what kind of started to happen in the booth was, I felt like my register got, I kind of sat in it a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
And the attitude behind it was different. I can feel a different kind of resentment and bitterness in the way, just in him. And that comes out in, to me, behind somebody's eyes. And one of the things that I learned in the booth, because I don't consider myself a voice actor. I've done some voice acting as a part of on-camera projects and other things, but this is really my VO animation debut. And what I learned is fully embodying what's happening to the character in the booth. Like, the more it's in your body, the more it's behind your eyes, the more it's going to translate to the texture of your voice. And it just felt right for it to be different, because he's different.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was cool to explore. And I got to say, Travis and Sam were awesome, and helping guide me into a comfortable place where I can step into like that kind of more full expression of him.
You killed it. I want to see you doing more voiceover stuff.
Wow, thank you. That's very nice. It was intimidating, I got to say. Like, I was like, oh man, this is kudos to you voice actors, because this is not an easy job. And
Yeah.
I definitely learned a different level of respect for them after having done that.
Oh, I love that. And then you talked a little bit about kind of leaning into this resentment for Zerxus. And I think what was so interesting to me is we're seeing a character in the aftermath of sacrifice. Because usually for us, like, a story ends with a sacrifice, or we see the aftermath of those living, but this time we see it from the person that was like sacrificed themselves for others. How do you think kind of not only that resentment, but almost like a growth in selfishness was really like something that you wanted to lean into, and how it changed Zerxus as he watched his family move on from him?
It's interesting, because I don't necessarily feel like I arrived at, like, oh, he's selfish and I'm going to lean into that. I feel like it was more just imagining his family so far out of reach and forgetting him and withering through age. And that just brings up so much. It brings up things that I guess live in a sense of resentment, and maybe this sort of, I guess, I don't know, selfish seems like too tiny a box. But what I can say is that it definitely activates something, and it's a kind of grief in a way, and yeah, it's hard to describe, but it's sitting and thinking about what you were striving for and hoping for and waiting for. I do think that there was a part of Zerxus that held on to, in the miniseries, Brennan as Evandrin basically saying like, I will find you and I
Yeah.
won't forget you. And then how long do you hold on to that as the decades, as the centuries pass, and what that does to the spirit of a person is impossible for me to find an answer to, but it's in that like inability to find the answer that I feel like a lot of the juice is. The unanswerable questions have a lot of fuel.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that it kind of explores the darker side of hope, because we see a lot of like in these stories, it's always like how hope is helpful and hope is important. And this shows kind of how hope can be destructive for someone like
Yeah.
Zerxus. So I thought that was very cool. Can you talk a little bit about the dynamic between Zerxus and Pike and why you think he was so drawn to her versus the other members of Vox Machina?
Yeah. Oof. That's to me. I feel like that's it's very obvious in a sense why. I mean, she's an intact version of a part of who he used to be.
Yeah.
And when you look at someone who's still embodying that belief that redemption is possible for everybody, that's it. It's like a magnet. It's a complicated magnet. But there's no. I wonder if Zerxus has been watching Pike for a while or aware of Pike for a while, and that's it. It's the moment with her and the kind of spirit ghoul that Pike tries to redeem.
Yeah.
Is that moment captures so much of what would draw Zerxus to Pike.
Completely agree. I think what's also interesting to me is that he's drawn to Pike because she, like, not only does she have this belief of the redemption, but she is tied to a god that is all about redemption. Would you like to see that kind of come into play with the possibility of Zerxus finding his own redemption? Because the story in Calamity was really about finding redemption for someone else who wasn't seeking.
Yeah. Yes. I love scenes that as an actor, I imagine like, wow, what would go down if you put this person and this person in a room together with this as the conflict? And a scene like that is absolutely exciting to me as an actor. Like as Zerxus, I just kind of imagining confronting Pike and challenging that, or seeing how she then challenges him back. And where is there redemption for Zerxus in that, if there is any?
Yeah.
It's very enticing. I don't know where it would go, but again, the not knowing is what's exciting to me as an actor. You just play to find out. Yeah, that would be super cool. I would love to explore all of that.
I think it was also really interesting to me because the Everlight told Pike redemption is not a thing in the Hells. Like that's not possible. Do you think that kind of being almost like not a rule, but just like how the Hells work, do you think that kind of corroded an aspect of Zerxus at his core?
I think it is impossible for Zerxus to not have been affected by the environment that he has been in for 1,000 years. And one of the things that I included in his psyche for Calamity was that I was interested in having him sort of experience a kind of isolation from Avalier.
Yeah.
Because I am interested in how the environment affects a person and may erode or build up aspects of themselves. There's no way he has not been affected by being in the Hells. And that is absolutely a possibility of how that kind of erosion, that's definitely on the table.
And then I want to talk a little bit about how he remembers the events of Calamity. I thought it was so interesting that he was like, in his story, he had nothing to do with it. It was very,
Yeah.
I wasn't paying enough attention to my friends and they caused this, where people who watch Calamity know that's not entirely true. It's not
Oh yeah.
wrong, but it's not entirely true. Could you talk to me about why you think he's not only like chosen this narrative, but how it might be something he needs to hold on to?
Yeah. Denial is a powerful thing.
Yeah.
And here's what I do know, because I also have a degree in psychology on top of all this other stuff that I do. I know that our memories are full of false narratives,
Yeah.
and it doesn't compromise how how much we hold on to them and believe them to be the utter truth. And we do, as life goes on, we kind of have a hand in rewriting and reinterpreting the way certain events went down. And sometimes it's because it's really hard to fully look at yourself in the mirror and admit that something went wrong or admit that you had a part in something. And I'm not surprised that he would start to rewrite his part. I don't even know while it was happening if he was fully aware
Mm.
of what he was doing. I think he was trying to strike a deal and make choose the lesser of many evils with very little time during the calamity. But after so many years, seeing what it all has cost him and the hells that he's been through,
Yeah.
yeah, that's going to change the way that he sees things out, out of survival. Like the way it might be the very thing that's keeping his mind from breaking.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. I love that. Yeah, to me, it was so interesting too, because his dynamic with Asmodeus in Calamity was such a sticking point for everyone as it came like clear to everyone. Oh, we left him alone too long and he might be communicating with a deity he shouldn't be. To then see him have no interactions with Asmodeus, as far as we could tell during Legend of Vox
Right.
Machina, was really interesting. How do you think that relationship kind of changed over the last 1,000 years?
Whoa, that is, and almost feel like that's an impossible question. But gosh, there's a part of me that wonders, has it changed or has it just continued to be again and again and again another version of itself, like a
Yeah.
broken record? I do think that Xerxes has it in him to just stay the course
Yeah.
and not relent, because with this, relentless paladin, redemption paladin, there is a kind of narrow-sighted, just never giving up on the thing that you believe. So I see that there's a version of it kind of going around and around and around, but then each time the circle repeats itself, it's like it's more like a corkscrew. So it's like a
Yeah.
deeper experience of this thing that we keep revisiting. I kind of feel like that seems to feel right, but there is a possibility where there at some point maybe he finally went off course and went down another direction, which seems like he's looking for that. His interest in Pike is a deviation from that trajectory, that endless circle or endless corkscrew. I think that, I mean, especially with so many years, I feel like there's enough time to have it to for all of it to be possible at some point.
Yeah.
So that's
Um,
my non-answer.
I love it. And then I want to talk to you a little bit about Xerxes' feelings about the gods, because I thought it was very interesting that to him, he's like, they all lie. All of them are bad. Do you think that's kind of a combination of him being alive during the era of like before the calamity when the gods walked among people? Do you think it's him having lived in the hells for so long? Or is it truly that to him, there's no difference between the prime deities and the betrayer deities? He truly is just like, they're all selfish and liars and you shouldn't trust them.
I think it lives a little bit in that. And it's definitely influenced from the time that he lived in.
Mhm.
because the matron of ravens had ascended shortly before the calamity, so that was within reach, and they were walking amongst us, and they operate like we do in so many ways with agendas, and there's that absolutely has a lot to do with it. And then also being witness for 1,000 years. There are very few things that have been around as long as Xerxes, and he remembers the calamity. His memory is still intact, even if it has shifted and been twisted. He still remembers things very clearly and probably recounts that over and over again in his mind. And at the same time, has had 1,000 years of witnessing what the gods will do and what they won't do. And it must have, I mean, all of that absolutely has an interplay. Like, why he's aware of the Everlight not being present for Pike, and why are you leaving this person that has been in service to you nonstop, and you were able to turn your back on them without explanation. Like, there are things I think that they can be held to account for, and that absolutely is with him for sure, I would say.
I loved it in like the current campaign that's going on. We got to see Belltails interact with the Archheart, but I so want to see an interaction with them and Zerxus, who's just gonna come in and be like, I know a lot of stuff you don't know. These guys aren't great.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he's willing to I do he's always understood that they're powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And but there's also things that he is willing to confront them on and question them on and challenge them on. And that would be interesting to see how that plays out where he is now. To be honest, it seems like a equally daunting and exciting and daunting in equal parts, because I don't even know how to interpret that or how I might embody that. But the idea of giving it a go is really exciting.
And then after the episode aired, there were a lot of fans that kind of picked up on those final moments with Zerxus and had a lot of theories about his potential ties to the Whispered Ones. Did you have any thoughts when you were kind of looking at that script and kind of keyed in like, that's interesting?
I I think that's kind of as far as I was able to go. Is yeah, interesting. And in my mind, I'm already starting to imagine different possibilities,
Mm-hmm.
so that if ever the time comes and I need to step into one trajectory or another, I've already started to kind of plant the seeds for whatever that road might be.
Yeah.
But it was definitely intriguing. Very curious to see what might be on the other side of that.
Yeah, I'm hoping we have more seasons because I do want to see that explored and adding in the Xerxes element. I'm like, you guys made me more excited for this. I didn't think that was possible.
That's awesome.
Were there any elements of Xerxes that you maybe didn't have the chance to explore with this that you would like to in the future, or even in like other forms of media, if there was like a book or comic or something that was just something that, because this obviously wasn't a ton of time, but was there something where you're like, I wish we'd been able to kind of see more of this piece of his evolution?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. And selfishly, if I can just let things be all about him for a moment,
Yeah.
I would love to see a bit about Evandrin and Elias
Yeah.
trying to get to him, and how close they may have gotten,
Yeah.
and what stopped that from happening. I'm really curious about what that part of the story. Yeah. Ugh. And and of course, I always wonder: is there redemption for him?
Yeah.
And I just don't know.
Yeah, I think what was so interesting to me with Zerxus, especially in this episode, was that realization when Pike made him really confront like that he does want his family down here, even with how horrible that actually is. What for you was kind of that tipping moment for as you're playing him where you're like, oh, there's a lot of stuff he's not really addressed that he maybe needs to.
Yeah. Oh, I love messy characters. They're so fun.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you live with yourself? I mean, he has to. He has to live with himself for eternity
Yep.
with this loss, with this grief. Because not only did he believed that he made this decision and the sacrifice to give them a chance.
Yeah.
And they did. They got to go on in some way, shape, or form. Elias definitely went on, and Evandrin continued to exist in maybe the astral plane and found his way back to the material plane. And I do think that they at least attempted to fulfill their promise to find their way back to Zerxus and to get him out of the hells. But for it to not work out and for him to have them be constantly out of reach, never out of sight, never out of mind, but only out of reach. Regret is so messed up because it requires you to really believe in this alternate reality that if this happened or if this didn't happen, then this would be the reality that is better than the one that I'm in. And that has to become so real that the cost of that is I mean, I can't fathom it because I will never exist for 1,000 years to see what it's like for that kind of thing to bake into your being so fully. It's cool to play pretended though.
All right.
So yeah.
Last question I have for you. As a viewer, what were your thoughts when you got to see like Zerxus in animation and the stained glass come into play with the flashback?
The first time I saw that in its entirety was when I sat down to watch it myself in my living room.
Yeah.
And when I saw that montage happen with the full music and the full animation and stained glass, I mean, I cried a little bit. It hit me so hard, and just seeing the brass ring light up one at a time. Whoa! It was like, I don't know, like there was a nostalgia thing that happened, and it was so beautiful and a little heartbreaking because they're, I know how they met their end, and I know the one that got away and at what expense, and they were able to capture that in a montage, this entire like whirlwind of stuff. So, oh yeah, that hit me for sure.
I love it. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. I love Zerxus so much. This is such a great episode, and you were fantastic in it.
Thanks. Can I plug stuff that I have that's around the corner? Is that cool?
Yeah.
So if people want to see more Dungeons and Dragons stuff, I'm in this really cool podcast called Cast Party with really lovely people. So if you want to see me and more D&D related stuff, that's out there for people to check in. I show up in the second season and have been a regular player in their second season. They're great fun, great people. And I will be on another Amazon series, a live action one. It's called Butterfly. So in the new year, I believe is when it's meant to come out. You'll have a chance to catch me on that in my actual flesh, not animated.
Amazing. I can't wait. That's awesome. I'm also very excited for your narrative telephone episode.
Oh, yeah. I can't wait for that.
Don't believe you when you say it's going to be all light and breezy. I know you, Luis. You try for light and breezy, and it's not possible.
I have a dark soul. I can't help it.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.